Hey guys, today I want to talk about building a rear wheel with an Alfine 8 hub. Now, I'm doing a conversion here to an Alfine 8 hub, and obviously putting the hub in the rear wheel is probably the most important part of the whole process. And I felt like it was important to share a video with you showing how I did that. Now, when I looked at the video, I had to break it in two because otherwise it was too long. This video that you're getting ready to look at shows everything about building the rear wheel except lacing the spokes. Now, I have a completely separate video that goes into all the details about lacing the spokes, so you can watch that if you're interested. But otherwise, this video just covers everything except the spoke lacing. Also, the wheel that I'm building has 32 spokes and it's a double cross pattern. So if you're building a wheel that has something other than 32 spokes, or it's not a double cross, you would need to adjust accordingly for your build. So anyway, let's get into it. So the first thing I'm doing here, I'm showing I'm going to be cutting the spokes for the wheel. Now, because I had good measurements, I didn't need to cut the spokes. I could have just sent off and bought the spokes. It would have been easier, but in this case, I'm showing cutting the spokes on my spoke machine, cutting them to length, and then organizing them. Now, the spokes were different lengths on the right side and the left side, so I'm color coordinating or color coding them to make sure that I won't get them mixed up. And then I'm using this process to cut the threads. There is a thread cutter on the spoke machine, but I just like doing this better. Once you've cut a couple, you need to go in and make sure the nipple will fit. And now I'm going to go in and just showing I'm going to color code the other spokes. But on this particular process, what you want to do, you want to make sure you're well organized here. And I'm separating the spokes on a little spoke jig I have so that it'll be easy to find the spokes when I'm building the wheel. The last thing you want to do when you're building the wheel is be fumbling around or distracted trying to find parts. So once again, I've got them organized. The orange is one length, the green is another length, and they're separated on both ends of the spoke jig. But once you get the spokes organized, then you want to deal with the nipples. And here I have a spoke jig where I'm just going to lay out all the nipples. And once I get them all laid out, I'm going to go in and put a drop of oil on them. Now, having the spokes and the nipples allows you to fully focus on the wheel build, and everything's laid out. And by looking at your jigs, you can kind of tell where you are on the wheel build and make sure you're in relatively the right place. Once again, I'm just putting a drop of oil. I found where there's metal-to-metal contact, it's good to have a little oil. Now, normally at this point, I'd show lacing the wheel, but because of the length of the video, I didn't want to show that. So once the wheel's laced up, I'm going to start preparing the wheel to true it. And what you do here is I have a spoke a nipple wrench that I'm going to go in and get all the spokes to relatively the same tension with this wrench, and I'll go all the way around it. This just speeds up the process. Once I get it, before I put full tension on, I go in and put a drop of oil on each nipple. Once again, I want to have some oil where there's metal to metal contact. Then I'm going to take my spoke wrench and go in and get all the spokes to the same relative place in the nipple. Looking down at the wheel, I can see where the spoke is coming up in the nipple, and I normally tighten them all so that they're right at the top of the nipple. Once I get that, then I'm going to true the wheel. The first thing I'm going to do is side by side or lateral truing. I put the wheel in my jig. As I turn it, I'm looking for rubbing. And when there is rubbing, what I'm going to do is go in and loosen the spokes where there's rubbing. And if I loosen them a quarter turn on the right side, then I'll tighten them a quarter turn on the left side. What you want to do is keep the same tension in that wheel. So if you loosen one side, you want to tighten another. Wherever you tighten or loosen a spoke, you need to have an offset somewhere to keep the right tension. Once you get the lateral truing in pretty good shape, then you want to go to the radial or up and down truing. And in this particular case, I'm setting it so that it will rub if the wheel sort of has it's not totally round. And wherever it's rubbing, I'll go in and tighten the spokes where there's rubbing. Then I'll go on the opposite side of the wheel, or a place where there's a large gap, and I will loosen those spokes by an equal amount. Once again, you want to have the same tension at the start of this process and at the end. So by tightening in one place and loosening in another to offset that, that's how you keep the tension relatively the same. Now, once I get these radial and lateral truing, now I'm going to go in and dish or center the wheel. And here I have a special jig to go in. I'm going to set the jig, press it down on one side, and go in on the other side and press it down. And what I'm looking for is a gap. Now, wherever there's a gap, that means that the hub is not in the center. And on this particular wheel build, I want it in the center. So whatever side there is a gap, I want to go in and loosen the spokes all the way around the rim on the side where there's a gap. And if there's still a gap, I want to go in and by an equal amount tighten the spokes on the side where there isn't a gap. And once again, trying to keep the same tension in the wheel. So if you're loosening the right side, you want to tighten the left side. And in this particular case, I got it pretty good. So I'm going to go back, and now step 4 in this truing the wheel, I'm going to go in and put it back in the jig. And once I get it in there, now what I'm going to do is check the spoke tensions. Now I have a little meter here to check the spoke tensions, and what I'll do, I'll go in and just make sure that the tensions are relatively the same. If the average tension is around 20, I'm looking for any spoke below 18 or greater than 22, just a relative range like that. Now, once you finish this process, then you'll go back through the truing and the dishing and the tensioning over and over, and you'll keep doing this until you get the wheel within the tolerances that you want. And you may have to do this many times, but once you finish that, then you need to pre-tension the wheel. And to pre-tension the wheel, I'll take a couple of 2x4s, lay them on the ground, and once I get the 2x4s on the ground, I'm going to take and lay the finished or basically finished wheel at this point, lay it on the 2x4s, and then stand on it and walk all the way around it, flip it over, do the same thing on the other side. And then once I get that, then I'm going to put it on the jig and just have a visual inspection. So I'm looking for anything abnormal or out of alignment so I can fix it. In this case, I didn't have any imperfections, and the wheel build has been completed successfully. Well, there you have it, guys. That's how I laced up my rear wheel for my Alfine 8 conversion. Hope I've given you something to think about, and I'll see you at the top.